Why do NBA players fear this man? Standing at 5'3", Tyrone Muggsy Bogues is the most feared man in basketball. Do you realize how short 5'3" is? Here's Muggsy next to The Rock. Here's Muggsy next to Kylie Jenner. It doesn't matter who you put Muggsy next to, he looks ridiculous. So why does this 5'3" man scare every single NBA player? How does a 5'3" man even make it to the NBA? What team would want a guy this short? In this video, I will answer every burning question surrounding Muggsy Bogues. Seeing his struggles and how he overcame them will change your life forever. Grab your popcorn, get your family together, because Muggsy's life is the most inspirational story you will ever hear.
Problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems. I solve them. I run through the night. Shoot me cold. My blessings are falling. The 30 is back. Tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something. That's what I call it. Phone and progression.
Hard to stop it.
In order to understand how a 5'3" man not only made it to the NBA, but also became the most feared man in basketball, you have to understand how his mind works. Muggsy has said in countless interviews that he owes all his success to one night. And it's time to talk about the night that made Muggsy who he is. It was already pretty late out. At this point, Muggsy should have been asleep, but he heard a window shatter across the street. As a 5-year-old, he had no idea that the streets of Baltimore were deadly. This is the murder capital of the United States. But hey, he was a kid. And kids are curious, so Muggsy decided to sneak out across the street and see what was going on. This was a bad idea. He made his way over to this bar and grill right across from his apartment, when suddenly, Muggsy's 5-year-old body was laid out across the pavement, bleeding, unconscious, and barely alive. He hadn't realized it yet, but he had just been shot with a 12-gauge shotgun. It turns out there were some kids outside fighting, and someone broke a store window. When the owner, old man Chester, decided to go investigate, he pulled up and started blasting at the first thing he saw moving. Poor little Muggsy. He'd later wake up in the hospital, recovering from near-fatal wounds in his arms and legs. Somehow, he survived. At just 5 years old, Muggsy learned that life could be over in an instant.
Being at the wrong place at the wrong time. My mom and dad was going crazy, not knowing that I was outside, and then knowing that, I was one of the kids laying out there with a couple buckshots all over his body was very frightening. So, that changed my mindset. I remember early on when I used to go down on the court with my basketball and hearing all the words and hearing all the, the criticism about me being short. But after I got shot, I remember going back down there and hearing those same criticism about myself, but they didn't have the same impact.
Getting shot as a 5-year-old and surviving gave Muggsy a cutthroat mentality. He realized then that in life, it was kill or be killed. And Muggsy decided he wasn't going to be the one that dies. So, now you know Muggsy's got shotgun shells in his butt, and you know what motivates him. Coming out of the hospital, Muggsy was more determined than ever to make something of his life. Yeah, this kid at 5 years old was focused on his future. Man, I was just trying to eat cereal and watch cartoons when I was 5. Muggsy might have a cutthroat mentality now, but kids still saw him as a joke, and no one was afraid of him, at least not yet. It was time for Muggsy to put this new mentality to the test. With his mind focused on greatness, Muggsy started going to a nearby rec center where he would play every day for years. He was staying at the rec center playing until they closed, and when he went home, he would stay up all night playing on hoops he made for himself out of milk crates. Muggsy was already dedicating his entire life to the game of basketball, and he wasn't even 10 years old. By the time he made it to high school, he hit his max height, 5'3". He knew being 5'3" is the biggest weakness anyone could ever have at basketball, but he decided he was going to make his height something to be feared. Muggsy played one game for his local public high school team and was instantly picked up by Dunbar High. And Dunbar High is much more than any old high school. This is a prestigious, nationally recognized school known for producing athletes that go to the NBA. So with that, A lot of people questioned Dunbar's choice, wondering why would they want to pick up a 5'3" guy. Muggsy has spent his entire life up to this point proving kids wrong down at the rec center. Now, he's got to prove himself with the world watching.
Coming in, flex. I just wanna win, LABB, who we running with, 2, 2, 3, 3. I'm on 10 again.
Yeah, Muggsy did pretty damn good in high school. With 2 undefeated seasons, a state championship, and an MVP, Muggsy outplayed everyone at 5'3" his entire high school career. His success didn't even make sense. And you'd think with this kind of success going into college, Muggsy would have every option in the world. But following his high school career, Muggsy's entire world came crashing down. There wasn't one college that wanted a 5'3" Muggsy Bogues. Since getting shot, Muggsy dedicated his entire life to the game of basketball, and not having a single offer hurt more than getting shot ever could. He started reaching out to every school he could think of, begging for any opportunity to try out and show what he was made of. And in the end, Muggsy only heard back from one school, Wake Forest in North Carolina. Now, Wake Forest is not a prestigious school by any means, but it brought some NBA scouts around and could lead to an opportunity if Muggsy can prove himself again. When Muggsy first stepped foot in Wake Forest, other players trying out thought he was someone's younger brother. He knew if he wanted to make it, he had to put the fear of God into every soul in that stadium. Muggsy laced up and started going to work. And he must have impressed whoever was there watching, because that day, Muggsy earned himself a full ride scholarship and a spot on their team. Even though he made it to Wake Forest, that doesn't mean everyone wanted him there. His teammates were pretty upset that their school would bring on a 5'3" guy. They had no respect for him and didn't think he belonged on the team. And it seems like the coaches felt the same way. They barely gave Muggsy any playing time his freshman year, but when he did get an opportunity, he ran with it.
You know it's not, get out my way. Like my 2K green or blue, I'm not into games. Focus on your player's face while I'm stacking change.
Over time, his teammates realized they were wrong. They loved playing with this guy. He could set them up for greatness every night. His coaches realized they were wrong too. When Muggsy was on the floor, their team was winning more games. By his senior year, Muggsy was averaging 14 points, 9 assists, and nearly 3 steals a game. For a guy his height to do this, Muggsy was quickly becoming something that people had to see to believe. With Muggsy finishing his senior season, he went from not having a single school reaching out to being eligible for the NBA draft. This is what Muggsy worked so hard for. Going into the draft, analysts and talking heads all had their doubts. This guy has no shot at all. I mean, look at him. He's 5'3". What NBA team would want that guy? Luckily for Muggsy, a few days before the draft, he was invited out to a training camp in Chicago. This is a pretty typical thing. The NBA hosts training camps where teams have an opportunity to go watch guys that will be in the draft. But this training camp was different. This was the final training camp before the draft, and this was the only one that the billionaire team owners personally went to and watched. This created a new do-or-die scenario for Muggsy Bogues. Right now, the talk is that Muggsy might not get drafted at all, and he knew he couldn't take those chances. So Muggsy went out there and gave it everything he had. He left his heart on the floor. And now, sitting in an arena with thousands of other players waiting to see who would have their life changed forever, it was time to see if Muggsy's lifelong work would pay off.
Welcome to the 1987 NBA Draft. The San Antonio Spurs select David Robinson from Navy, Dennis Hobson of Ohio State, Scott Pippen of Central Arkansas, Kenny Smith from North Carolina, Kevin Johnson from the University of California, Olden Polynice of the University of Virginia, Horace Grant of Clemson. The Washington Bullets select Tyrone Bogues of Wake Forest.
Tyrone Bogues
Bogues, who's from the Washington area, Dunbar High School, is going to be loved by the fans there. He is now the shortest player in the NBA.
Our boy Muggsy did it. Coming into the NBA in 1988 as the shortest player in history, he proved every single doubter wrong. And now that he's in the NBA, there's no stopping him. So, now you may be asking yourself, okay, he's in the NBA, but why do NBA players fear this guy? I still don't get it. Well, you know what? Don't take my word for it. Instead, I think you should hear from some guys that played with and against Muggsy in the NBA.
Muggsy was the smallest, fiercest player that I've ever seen.
He was the smallest guy on the court, but he played like the biggest guy on the court. You know, he played with the most heart.
He was a spark plug. Man, he had to be one of the fastest guys in the league.
That scrapper, intensity, done.
His competitive spirit, bigger than everyone's. You were never gonna punk Muggs.
He was a pest defensively, and he bothered people.
There were so many players in the league that hated bringing the ball up the court. Nobody wanted to bring the ball up against Muggsy.
Very difficult to play against him.
When bigger guards post him up, his teammates would say, "Muggsy, you need any help?" He said, "Nope. He's just as unaccustomed to doing this as I am."
Every time Muggsy walked up to a door, he had it slammed in his face. But instead of walking away, he kicked every door down. By the end of his run in 2001, Muggsy's career made it obvious that he was more than the shortest player in the NBA. Tyrone Muggsy Bogues deserves to go down in history as an NBA Hall of Famer, forever changing the game of basketball. This is the most feared man to ever step on the court, doing what no one thought could be possible. If you ever for a second doubted yourself and what you could do, take a look at this man's life and think again.